Flamingo Insurance. What do you want?
Yeah, can we get the auto insurance policy? Hello? Hello?
You don't have to sacrifice service to save with NJM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in. Hello, everyone, and you are tuned in to another edition of Inquirer live at GameDay Central, presented by NJM Insurance. Welcome to the playoffs. Today, we are coming to you live from the press box at Lincoln Financial Field, where in just a little bit, the top-seeded Philadelphia Eagles will host the New York Giants in the NFC divisional round. I'm your host for Game Day Central, Josh Tolentino, a bit too juiced up here, and joined by my fellow co-host of Game Day Central and Eagle beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, EJ Smith. EJ, how is it going?
It's going well, Josh. Yeah, I feel like you got the postseason jitters out of the way early here. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I mean, I think I speak for a lot of Eagles fans. You know, this has been a long wait for this game. You know, we all sat around and watched football all weekend last weekend. Eagles enjoyed a first round bye, and now, yeah, I'm excited that we're finally at the game. It felt like a long day, kind of waiting for the game. You know, I tweeted 7 hours ago, like, how are we feeling, Eagles fans? And I got a lot of people with the Judge Judy meme, you know, slamming on the table, pointing at the clock. So yeah, I'm ready to get started here.
Yeah, obviously the other playoff game in the AFC is still going on between the Chiefs and the Jaguars. But here the Eagles are in prime time, EJ. We have covered this team every day throughout this entire season, and it's not over yet. I want to remind everyone who is tuned in that there is one place to be to find all of our Eagles coverage. EJ, where is that?
Yeah, Josh, that's inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day. You know, shout out to my wife. She told me that it's not backslash, it's just slash. So inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day is where we want to have a two-way conversation with you guys. You know, we're going to have our analysis in there. We're going to be giving you up-to-date information on any injuries that may have occurred or just stuff that you may not be able to see on the broadcast. And again, we want that to be a two-way conversation. We want you guys to tell us what you're seeing in the broadcast and just what you're seeing in the game, you know. And again, even throughout the game, it'll be us. It'll be Jeff McLane. We've got 3 columnists here. There'll be a lot of people in there giving you their analysis. So definitely make sure to go over to there.
All right, EJ, let's dive right into it. The Eagles ourselves, it's been a kind of feels like a long 2 weeks since Week 18, the regular season finale. Back then, the Eagles actually defeated the Giants here, which secured them home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs and the number 1 seed. They got that bye week. They're coming off rested. I think the biggest beneficiary, we can identify 2, right tackle Lane Johnson and quarterback Jalen Hurts, who are dealing with lingering injuries. I think without a doubt, those are the 2 biggest impact players in regards to their health over these past 2 weeks. They are ready to go. We'll see exactly how close they are to 100%, but Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts back on the field tonight.
Yeah, I think with Jalen Hurts, you know, he's off the injury report. You know, he went through practice just fine. I think that the biggest question that's going to linger is, will this be the full Jalen Hurts experience? You know, will he be, you know, unrestricted, whether it's quarterback runs, zone read, whether it's just, you know, an ability, just the willingness to extend plays. Obviously, he was back against the Giants a couple of weeks ago in the regular season finale, but he wasn't quite, you know, the Jalen Hurts we were used to seeing. You know, maybe a little bit more averse to contact, maybe a little bit more willing to get rid of the ball faster, you know, maybe rush through the progressions a little bit. And, you know, I think that really did. It kind of took on that game took on, like, you know, a little bit of the energy of a preseason game. Guys just trying not to get hurt. Maybe a little bit more cautious. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what version of Jalen Hurts we get here. I think that there's reason to believe that there won't be restrictions on him. I think that he might be, you know, back to as close to 100% as he's going to be. I think the last 2 weeks have been important in terms of getting him that rest, so he's a little bit closer to 100%, maybe a little bit more willing to take contact and, you know, get hit in the shoulder. So I think that the Giants are going to test that shoulder early. I think we'll have an answer pretty soon. But, yeah, I do think that the last 2 weeks have been pivotal for him.
EJ, you pointed it out in that Week 18 game. It wasn't the typical Jalen Hurts that we've become accustomed to seeing on the field. not many quarterback design runs. Even in the few instances that he did scramble EJ, we saw that he was very hesitant in regards to fighting for extra yards. Again, that's not Jalen Hurts' makeup. I mean, he is one that is always going to fight for those extra yards. He's trying to put on points on the board. In those very small instances that he did run, I mean, he was sliding early, certainly avoiding contact. Play calling was a big part of that, but I don't think today we're going to find out early, but it's going to be up to the Giants to counter. Depending on exactly how Jalen Hurts is deployed. EJ, on the other side of that, the quarterback for the New York Giants, Daniel Jones, coming off one of the best games of his career. The Giants upset the Vikings. I say upset kind of in quotation marks because they were just a slim underdog in that game. But again, credit to the Giants. They defeated the Minnesota Vikings to advance to this round. EJ, in watching that game last week, because we were on that bye week, what were your biggest takeaways from how Daniel Jones performed?
Yeah, I mean, he was decisive. He got the ball out, took a lot of underneath stuff. I think, in the playoffs, there's a lot of eyeballs. There's a lot of opinions. I think there might have been a little bit of a fever pitch for Daniel Jones. I mean, Minnesota's defense wasn't very good all season. I don't think it was very good against the Giants last weekend. Credit to him. He took what was there. The Vikings play a lot of quarters coverage, a lot of off coverage, similar to what the Eagles do. And Daniel Jones just, again, made a living off of taking the small stuff. He was getting the ball out relatively quickly, not as quickly as you might think based off of his, average depth of target. His time to throw was kind of like middle of the road. So, yeah, I mean, the takeaway I had from it, especially with his legs, he impacted the game and was efficient. But I don't think that, that game was necessarily the indication that, this is Daniel Jones' arrival party. I saw comparisons to Andrew Luck and, other really, really high-level quarterbacks. I kind of want to see it for a few more weeks here, and I think that this game will be a good test. The Giants' offense in general, they've got a good receiving trio. It's not people that you maybe have heard of. They're not household names, but, those guys can play. And, Isaiah Hodgins especially is a guy who came on later in the season. I think that the Eagles defense will have a good test here, but again, I think that this Giants offense, the output that they had against Minnesota, there's reason to believe the Eagles can at least, match up a lot better than Minnesota did last week.
Yeah, and EJ, concentrating on that offensive line there for the Giants, Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is an all-pro type talent. He's been very consistent throughout the year, very disciplined throughout the season. He only had 2 penalties called against him. That's pretty outstanding for an offensive lineman in the NFL. But on the other side, Evan Neal, a young player, and as we saw earlier in the season, guys like Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, able to take advantage there. I think that's a matchup that is definitely worth paying attention to as the night progresses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Josh Sweat, he had a really good game against Andrew Thomas. So, I could see that matchup being important too. Sweat on the other side against Thomas. And then, I think Brandon Graham, particularly against Evan Neal, I think Evan Neal, he's a big guy. And I mean, Andrew Thomas went through this his rookie season too, struggling, against the NFL pass rushers. And I think that whether it's Hassan Reddick or Brandon Graham over there on Evan Neal's side, I think that, if you watch that Vikings game, Daniel Jones didn't have a lot of time in the pocket. It was basically Evan Neal's going to give you 2, maybe 2.5 seconds, and you're going to have to get out of there. So, yeah, definitely a matchup to watch on that right side. Evan Neal might go on to have a really good career, but at least for this playoff game, I think the Eagles pass rush can get home against them.
Yeah, and on the back end, EJ, they definitely have the guys to cover, as we've seen their success throughout the entire season. Secondary led by Darius Slay, James Bradbury, an ex-Giant, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the big Eagles playmaker. He is back in the mix. Still out, though, for the Eagles is Avonte Maddox. Definitely a spot to pay attention to. EJ, are you anticipating C.J. Gardner-Johnson to, take some high-leverage snaps there in the slot? Josiah Scott, who is, turned into one of Jonathan Gannon's, I wouldn't say favorites. That might be too strong of a word, but Gannon definitely likes him in the way that he's able to play his zone defenses.
Yeah, well, Scott I think he actually ended up in the doghouse, for the last game of the season. He didn't play a single defensive snap. And I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson, this is playoff time. He moved to the safety spot, trying to help his market in free agency. And he's played really well at that spot. He proved just about anything you would hope that he'd be able to prove, at that new position. But for the next couple of weeks, I think you're going to see him in the slot. I think you're going to see him, in closer to the ball where he can impact plays. I mean, he played well against the Giants in the last game of the regular season, and I really do. I think that you'll see a lot of him. I don't even know if it'll be just high leverage. I think he's just going to play there. Reed Blankenship is a guy who you can kind of like you can insulate him on the weak side at the safety spot, and he's played well enough that he's earned that role. I think that he's shown that the defense can function with him in that spot. So, yeah, I think you'll see a lot of C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the slot over the playoffs, and it's credit to him. It's playoff time. It's time for whatever the team needs. Is what he's going to give for him. So, yeah, I definitely think you'll see a lot of him in the slot tonight.
EJ, there are other matchups that we will certainly discuss later in the show, highlighting the Eagles' top offensive playmakers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and running back Miles Sanders. But one more spot to pay attention to in the trenches. The Eagles' offensive line, we mentioned Lane Johnson dealing with an injury that is actually going to require surgery later in the season. In the middle, five-time All-Pro Jason Kelce. One matchup that I know you and I have discussed throughout the week, Dexter Lawrence. He can be a one-man wrecking crew. He was definitely dominant against the Vikings. How do you expect the offensive line to hold up against that Giants interior D-line?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have their hands full. Dexter Lawrence has been one of the most effective. He's the most effective nose tackle as far as pass rushing goes. I mean, as far as defensive tackles go, he was all pro for a reason. Really, really good at getting pressure on the quarterback from those, really tight alignments. A lot of guys can't generate pressure at the nose like he does. So definitely a game wrecker. Leonard Williams is a good player. And Kayvon Thibodeau is coming along really well, and he's a good pass rusher too. I think that the biggest thing is like, if Lane Johnson can hold up, he doesn't need the help, whether it's from Dallas Goedert. Again, we're going to talk about Goedert later, or if it's from Isaac Seumalo. You don't want to have to slide, trying to accommodate for Lane, if he's struggling, especially when you have guys like Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. I do think the Eagles are, matched up better than the Vikings are. The Vikings have spent a lot of picks on offensive linemen, but they don't really have the results to show for it. And those guys really did struggle against that Dexter Lawrence. But yeah, I think that the reason the Eagles should be kind of glad they got the Giants in this round instead of the Cowboys is because they match up well. They got the interior offensive linemen to kind of hold up against those guys. Obviously they were successful against Dexter Lawrence in the first matchup. So yeah, he's definitely a player that is you need to keep a close eye on. I think it's one of those guys we can instruct fans like on the broadcast, find that guy every single play because he's the type of guy who can impact the game. But yeah, I don't think that the Eagles are going to have to account for him too much. It's the luxury of having one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the NFL.
EJ, let's transition over to who's hurt, who's healthy. We teased it a little bit in discussing injuries at the top of the show. But EJ, I want to rewind back to last week after the Giants game. Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, he said that Jalen Hurts was feeling very, very sore. I think his exact words is how he put it. But you fast forward to this week, the first walkthrough, the two practices that they had leading up to this game. Jalen Hurts is no longer listed on the injury report. What is the significance of that? And also pointing out that Hurts, in his own words, says that he's feeling good and he knows there is a bounty on him every single week.
Yeah, I think the way that they've played the injury is unlike the way they play most other players' injuries. They've kind of been a little bit more open about, how hurt he really is. And I'm not sure if it's gamesmanship. I'm not sure if it's, just the way that Hurts is messaging with the injury. But yeah, I sort of think that, at the end of the week, the indication is that he's feeling good and that there won't be restrictions. So I'm curious to see how that really bears out, if there are a lot of designed runs or, if he's, trying to avoid contact. But, it's the playoffs. Like I was mentioning earlier with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. It's the same with Jalen. We were watching a game before this broadcast started of Patrick Mahomes kind of gotten through an ankle injury. So, this is the playoffs. I think that all, you kind of take the training wheels off, even if you're hurt. Everybody's kind of dealing with something at this point. So yeah, I think you could expect to see him be his normal self as far as the restrictions go, and we'll see how he does taking hits on it and everything else. But yeah, I don't think the Eagles are going to kind of baby him through this playoff run.
On the other side for the Giants, EJ, a couple of their top playmakers on the defensive side of the ball were listed on the injury report this week. We'll see how healthy they are going up against the Eagles playmakers. But guys like their top cornerback, Adoree Jackson, safety Julian Love, both listed on the injury report. We see them here on the field. They're ready to go. What matchup, if you had to identify one on the Eagles offense, do you like here today?
So the one I like is Dallas Goedert. The Giants defense is really, really good right up front on the defensive line, especially on the interior. They've got some good players on the back end. Jalen Hurts has talked before about how much respect he has, particularly for Xavier McKinney. But if there is a weakness on this Giants defense, it's the linebackers. Jalen Smith, and Matt Milano are the two there, and it's I think that if you look at the track record of the Giants defense against tight ends, it's bad. They
Yeah.
are typically giving up a lot of gains. T.J. Hawkinson had a big game against them in the wild card round. So I think that's one of the things that's the benefit of the self scouting process. That Nick Sirianni talks about. They spent the bye week studying their own habits and studying where they maybe could improve. I think that they're going to notice this Dallas Goedert guy,
Yeah.
man, he catches a lot of the passes we throw at him. So, I could see Dallas Goedert having a big game. Lane Johnson plays into that, though. If Lane Johnson's struggling, through the injury and struggling with Kayvon Thibodeau or whoever else, then you need to start having Dallas Goedert into the chip more. That's going to impact the game plan. So, especially with how much the Giants typically blitz. We can talk a little bit about Giants blitzing at some point, too. But yeah, I definitely think that Dallas Goedert's the matchup to watch. I'm also really curious to see how the Giants defend A.J. Brown. They did a good job against Justin Jefferson. They double teamed him a lot, bracketed him a lot, sort of forced the Vikings to let somebody else beat them. And the Vikings kind of struggled with that. I think that A.J. Brown might have a lot of eyeballs on him today. So, that kind of falls into Dallas Goedert's hands. Devontae Smith, even Quez Watkins a little bit could be involved if, they are bracketing coverages toward A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith.
EJ, you hinted at it. TJ Hawkinson last week, the Vikings tight end. I believe he had 10 catches on 11 targets, over 100 yards. There will be some plays to be made there for Dallas Goedert. One you hinted it as well, but in the self scouting process, undoubtedly Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, they had to see in those couple games after Dallas Goedert came back from injury. I don't think he had a game more than 40 yards. It's we have to get this guy the ball. As you also hinted at, the Giants love the blitz, although they haven't been doing that as much in the past two games. Quick way to get, counter that, getting the ball to Dallas Goedert there, whether it be in the flat, those quick intermediate routes, or even a screen, as we have grown to see the Eagles love to do. We'll see how Dallas Goedert takes advantage of those matchups today. EJ, it's time to transition over to our favorite segment. It is called What You Said. A reminder to everyone back home, the place to submit your comments and questions is at inquirer.com/Eagles GameDay. We'll have a chance to read them during our next show. If the Eagles advance, the NFC Championship is next Sunday afternoon, I believe, 3 p.m. The Eagles do have home field advantage, so that game would be back here at Lincoln Financial Field. EJ, our first comment comes from Retired at 58. Congratulations. I've said
Nice,
before that I think if the Eagles run the ball, don't commit dumb penalties, and don't turn the ball over, they should win this game. EJ, this commenter points out some very basic things in a football game, but you look at the Eagles' losses. I mean, those were turnover-ridden games, 4+ turnovers in each game. Simply put, if Jalen Hurts takes care of the ball, which he's done a majority of the season, I want to say 90% plus of these games, he's really prioritized taking care of the ball right around the injury. He had some turnovers, but if they take care of the ball, I mean, they're just matchup-wise, just way too many playmakers on the Eagles' side.
Yeah, I mean, that has been the formula, all season to beat the Eagles is force them to turn the ball over, control the ball on the other side, by running a lot. So definitely think that's one of the big keys. I mean, I think it's important to remember that is really one of the only ways. That's the only way we've seen the Eagles lose games, really. Obviously the Cowboys game was high scoring and everything else, but it was, turnovers really kind of cost them that game. The Saints game, they came out flat and turnovers again. It was I really feel like when the Eagles are playing, at full strength, they're really the only way that they lose games this season has been through the turnover battle. So, obviously Nick Sirianni and his coaching staff have talked about that is those are the two stats they look at: turnovers and explosive plays. So, yeah, I think that limiting explosives and, obviously limiting turnovers, if they're mindful about those two things, then I do think they can make this run. For sure, especially, starting tonight against the Giants, who, you're right, they just have a lot of talent advantages. They've got matchups to take advantage of. Whether it's, again, we talked about the Daniel Jones kind of the love that's been going on the last week. I think the Eagles defense just matches up so well against them. So, yeah, I think, forcing a couple turnovers and then protecting the ball will be huge today.
And certainly also in regards to ball security, a big factor in that, in addition to Jalen Hurts, running back Miles Sanders, fun tidbit here, but when Miles, he's a first-time Pro Bowler, but as soon as he heard or got news that he was a Pro Bowler, a few weeks ago. The first person he FaceTime was Saquon Barkley. We'll see which NFC East running back reigns supreme after this game. If Miles Sanders is going to have a big game, certainly going to have to take care of the football. EJ, next comment comes from KR, who says the Giants scored 30 points this season for the first time in Week 18 against the Colts, and then they did it again against the Vikings. If Jonathan Gannon allows more than 17 points, he should be gone by Sunday. A bit of an aggressive comment there from KR, but Jonathan Gannon's defense, might not be the exact formula that pleases fans, but they get the job done, and that's a big reason why he is getting some coaching interviews here for vacant head coaching jobs across the league. But I tend to agree with KR that looking at this Giants offense, I mean, the Eagles should have their way in regards to limiting them.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose the game, he might be gone by Sunday regardless, with all the head coaching interest he's getting. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Obviously, the Vikings play a similar style of defense to the Eagles. They play a lot of quarters, a lot of off coverage, a lot of zone, a lot of rally to the ball. And they gave up a lot of short stuff. And I really do think that the biggest difference between the Vikings scheme and the Eagles scheme is that the Eagles have a lot of talented players. That was kind of what we saw last season with Gannon's scheme, where it's like, well, if you're going to play off coverage and kind of make them make mistakes or hope, they have a holding penalty or, give up a sack, you need playmakers to do that. And the Eagles have that. They've got the defensive front, to get sacks and kind of get guys behind the sticks. And this defense really changes when they can get guys or get teams into known passing situations. So I think that'll be the key today, being really stout on first down and then forcing them into known pass on second and long or third and long. And then that's where the pass rush can start to get home. That's where, you can take advantage of James Bradbury and Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson in the slot. You can match up in man coverage in those situations and, really just kind of get after it. So I think that's going to be a big part of this defensive philosophy today is kind of getting them behind the sticks early. It's been that way all season, but especially with what you saw from Daniel Jones, who maybe wasn't really that willing to push the ball down the field against those coverages, last weekend.
You mentioned putting the Giants into known passing situations. The defense has certainly been susceptible at allowing big runs throughout the season. They kind of patched that up by acquiring guys like Linval Joseph, Nick Ndamukong Suh when they had some injuries there to Jordan Davis. Containing Saquon Barkley will definitely be a big task today, but when they force opposing teams into those known passing situations, EJ, I've got a story up on the Inquirer.com. Did a big feature on James Bradbury, and in one of in my conversation with him, he said him and Darius Slay, they love when they get put in those known passing situations in regards to third and medium, third and long. He says their aggressiveness kind of goes up a notch when it's in that situation for them to make plays, whether it be pass breakups, going for those interceptions. Jonathan Gannon's defense loves when third down comes and they know that Jan Jones is going to throw the ball. We'll see how the Eagles force them into those types of situations tonight. EJ, it's prediction time. Before I get your prediction, let's go to our Inquirer beat reporter, Jeff McLane, for his thoughts on tonight's game.
Hi, I'm Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks for joining me here at GameDay Central to talk about this big playoff matchup between the Eagles and the New York Giants. Just 2 weeks after they faced each other in the season finale, the Eagles won that game 22-16. But I think we can kind of put that game to the wayside. Jalen Hurts was not 100%. The Eagles' offense wasn't running at full capacities because they didn't have Hurts involved much in the run game. And the Giants were playing pretty much their B team. They were resting a bunch of key starters. So that game, I don't really put a lot of stock in that unless Hurts is not 100%. That is the key element here. If that shoulder's still bothering him, if you can't run the offense the way you want to in terms of him being a +1 factor, then yes, I think if you're the Eagles, you're a little concerned. I don't have that many concerns about that, though. I think they're going to unload and run the offense as is. As you saw it before the injury, you're going to see him run the ball a fair amount because that's what the Eagles have to do to win. And that's been the danger element that they've brought to so many defenses that they face this year. And Hurts, while we're not 100% sure about the shoulder and whether it's 100%, based upon what I'm hearing behind the scenes, he should be pretty darn close and good to go. So if we have Hurts at 100% or near 100%, and you have everyone else around him, including Dallas Goedert, who didn't play against the Giants in that first meeting in December, well, you have the offense that I think we've seen for most of this season. Now, the Giants are getting some guys back that they didn't have in that December matchup. Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinley in the secondary will be there, and you'll have Leonard Williams in the middle. So that, maybe tips the scales a little bit in their favor. If you're looking at personnel, Leonard Williams aside Dexter Lawrence, that's a formidable duo in the middle of that defense. That being said, the Eagles have a very good offensive line. They can offset a little bit of that advantage with Jason Kelce, Isaac Seumalo, Lander Dickerson. Are they going to have their hands full with those guys, especially Lawrence? Yeah, absolutely. The question will be whether Wink Martindale blitzes Jalen Hurts a lot. And I think he will. Now, he didn't do it last week against the Vikings because I just don't think that game called for him to do that. And what you saw was, Cousins stringing out long drives, but if ultimately they couldn't match the Vikings, that is, what the Giants are doing the other side of the ball. I'll get to that in a second. But if Hurts can find answers against this blitz, and I think they'll have them, especially if Wink is forced to go cover one, you can throw the ball down the field to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They have advantages on the outside, and certainly you have Dallas Goedert in the middle, and the Giants have shown that they've struggled against tight ends. So I think the offense should be fine. On the other side of the ball, yes, there are some questions about the defense, despite as well as they played and despite the numbers and everything that we've seen about this defense all year long, because the Giants are coming in with some momentum. Daniel Jones played the best game of his entire career last week against the Vikings. Now, that was not a good Vikings defense. Defensive coordinator Ed Donatell has already been fired. So I think there's a huge difference between that unit and this one. The Eagles have tons of talent. The big difference being, I think, up front, they've gotten more sacks by far any other team in the NFL this year. And those just aren't numbers. We've seen the production on a per snap basis of those guys getting after quarterbacks. And the Giants do not have a great offensive line. Andrew Thomas on the left side is good, but the rest of that unit, Eagles should be able to get after Daniel Jones without having to blitz, without having to take from the back. And I think that's going to be the key here. And I think you got to sell out a little bit Jonathan Gannon in terms of stopping the run, because look, that's what they have. You have Daniel Jones' ability to run himself, and you have Saquon Barkley. And I just don't think those receivers against this Eagles secondary can win a lot of those matchups. I know you say, okay, I got Darius Slay, I got James Bradbury, I got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's now playing in the slot part-time. I can trust those guys, but I still feel like you have to keep those safeties back there. I mean, I do feel like you can trust those guys. I do feel like you have to kind of devote a few more guys into the box on occasion to stop the run game and say, hey, Daniel Jones, beat us with your arm, despite what he did last week. So I think that's all going to play out that way. Look, are there ways that the Eagles can lose this? Certainly, but I think it's more about them losing it than the Giants winning it. And I think the Eagles will still win this game. So I got them winning 31-17. I know that's probably a big number to some people and certainly bigger than the spread. But I think when we look at the full picture here, the whole of the season, this is a much better team than the Giants. That's it here from me. I'm Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Back to you guys at Game Day Central.
Thank you so much to Jeff McLane for his thoughts on tonight's game. EJ, let's get yours. I think we're both in agreement that we're watching for Dallas Goedert. He has the potential to have a big game. Give me another player on offense and one player on defense that we should be watching out for.
I'm going with the obvious one, Jalen Hurts. I mean, this is the first time we've seen him healthy in over a month. You know, even if he's not 100%, I think that the last 2 weeks have been good for him. I mean, his throwing motion is seemingly. I mean, it doesn't seem like his throwing motion is affected at all. Whether it's whether he's 100% ready to be aggressive in the run game or not. I mean, the last time we saw him healthy against the Giants, they put up 44 points. So, yeah, give me number one. Give me the obvious guy. Give me Jalen Hurts on offense.
In addition to Dallas Goedert, give me Devontae Smith. He had a big touchdown reception the last time these teams played. Again, if Adoree Jackson, their top cornerback, is on A.J. Brown, we'll see how they game plan to defend the Eagles playmakers. It seems like they're everywhere on the field. There will be other one-on-one opportunities. Devontae Smith has shown he's certainly capable of taking advantage. What are you watching out for on defense? Give me one player.
I'm looking forward to seeing mostly all of the Eagles edge rushers against Evan Neal after watching the all 22 of the Giants. The earlier in the week, it's like, man, the Eagles can really take advantage of that. So whether it's Hassan Reddick or Josh Sweat, I'll give me Josh Sweat. In his return game, I mean, he was giving Andrew Thomas fits. So whether it's Andrew Thomas or if they line him up against Evan Neal, I could see him having a multi-sack game in his return. From a scary neck injury for sure.
Yeah, Josh Sweat missed that last game in the regular season after he had that neck injury against the Saints, needed to be ambulanced to the hospital. EJ, we've been watching Josh Sweat, though, throughout practice this week. He looks every bit of his explosive self. He's been having the best year of his career. That's a good guy to pick. For me, I'll go James Bradbury, the ex-Giant. He's been in the storylines leading up to this week. Again, got a feature on him you can check out at Inquirer.com. He'll be excited going up against his former teammates. So to run it back, I think EJ went Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and then the edge rushers as a whole, and James Bradbury for matchups to watch out for. EJ, we got through the whole show without mentioning his name, but we have to. I think 10 of his career touchdowns are against the Giants, the Giant killer, Boston Scott. Do you have an answer on, you've covered this team for several seasons now, Boston Scott's tenure against the Giants? Why is Boston Scott so successful against these Giants?
It's literally an inexplicable thing. It's one of life's great mysteries, but maybe I think he probably does it. At this point, he probably gets up to play these guys. He was the first player on the field today in warmups, so that might tell you something. I think he's anxious for the matchup. I don't know, maybe it's the way the Giants front is constructed, and Boston Scott's a smaller guy, harder to see. I have no idea. I can't even venture to guess what it might be, but definitely, if he rolls off a big run, Twitter's going to go, into a frenzy about the Giant killer once again. So
the Eagles enjoy it too, as they previewed what jerseys they were going to wear a couple days ago leading into this game. Boston Scott was that featured player in their image. So Boston Scott, the Giant killer, we'll see if he notches another career touchdown today against these New York Giants. EJ, give me your score prediction. What did you put into today's edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer?
So I'm not going to audible too much, but I am going to audible a little bit here. The longer and longer I think about the game, I do think that this game will be tighter than people think. I picked the Eagles to win, but not to cover. I still feel that way. I think it'll probably be a little bit higher scoring than I originally thought. I could see this game being ugly, though. I could see the Eagles getting off to, maybe a little bit of a sluggish start. Maybe the Giants have a lead at some point in the first half. But when it really comes down to it, all these games come down to a handful of plays. Whether it's you watch the Cincinnati Bengals and the Ravens game, Tyler Huntley reaches the ball over the goal line just before it reaches, they rip it out of his hands and go for a 98-yard touchdown. Those are the types of things that, really swing in these playoff games. Weird things happen in the playoffs. This is underscored, amplified even more by the fact this is the third time these teams have played each other in a 6-week span. I think this game will be closer. Obviously the last time we saw both of these teams at full strength, the Eagles blew them out, but Giants have gotten healthier since then. And again, I just think that the chess match of playing a team that many times in a tight window, I think it will make this game close. I think it's going to make it competitive. I think Eagles fans will be on the edge of their seats watching this game. But I do think that the Eagles, when it really comes down to it, just have the talent advantage. They've got the guys in place to make the plays to advance to the next round.
EJ, you pointed it out. I mean, there are just so many matchup advantages. The Giants certainly, as they it's been a phrase that some have been saying throughout the week, they're playing with house money as the underdog. But again, the Eagles just have plenty of advantages. Sorry, could you run your score back one more time?
I don't know if I gave you a score. I just kind of started talking about how I felt about it. Maybe that's a sign that I haven't really settled into it. So maybe 28-20. Give me something like that. I do think that they'll be able to win. I guess that'd be them covering. So give me 28-24. I don't think they'll cover, but I think they'll win.
All right, EJ goes 28-24. I'm going to go, I think I went 24-17, somewhat in that realm, in favor of the Eagles for all the reasons that EJ just said. EJ, before we wrap up, any final thoughts here before the Eagles host a playoff divisional round game?
No, I'm excited. The link, the last couple of home games, I feel like one of them was New Year's Day, and then the Giants game was kind of like a formality. So I'm excited to see the link today at full force. It's probably going to feel a lot more like it was in that Cowboys game, earlier in the season. I had to get here super early to avoid the traffic. So, yeah, no, I'm excited for the game.
The city has been buzzing throughout the entire week. fans have been tailgating all throughout the day, I believe as early as 8 a.m. So it's almost kickoff time, and it's time to wrap up here on Game Day Central. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Make sure you stick around on inquire.com/Eagles Game Day to follow the game with us. Again, myself, EJ Smith, Jeff McLane, all of our columnists are here on site to cover this divisional round game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. For EJ Smith, I am Josh Tolentino.
And Mike Sealski.
And Mike Sealski. There we go. A special appearance. Thank you so much for tuning in to Game Day Central. Enjoy the playoffs.
Bye, guys.